It was a night like any other, in the autumn of 2018, on a country road in rural New Mexico, where the stars seemed closer than the ground. My name is Alex, or at least that's what I called myself before that night. I was just an ordinary trucker, 42 years old, married with a 10-year-old daughter waiting for me at home 300 kilometers away. The radio hissed with old songs, the smell of diesel and stale coffee filled the cab, and the asphalt stretched out like an endless black river under the headlights. I didn't believe in anything I couldn't see with my own eyes. Ghosts, UFOs, aliens, nonsense for people with too much time on their hands. But that night, the universe decided to prove me wrong in a way that still makes me wake up sweating, my ears buzzing as if it's happening again. I was driving slowly, my eyes heavy after a whole day on the road, when I saw the lights for the first time. They weren't stars. They were 3 bright points, dancing in the sky like giant fireflies, changing color from blue to red, pulsing like a living heart. I thought it might be a drone, maybe a military plane testing something secret in those remote areas near Roswell. Roswell. The name echoed in my mind like a bad joke, those cheap documentaries about abductions. I laughed to myself and pressed the accelerator, but the lights didn't disappear. They came down, closer, and the air inside the cab turned icy, like someone had opened a refrigerator in hell. My truck started to shudder, the engine coughing as if it were suffocating, and suddenly, total silence. The headlights went out, the radio died, and there I was, stopped in the middle of nowhere, my heart pounding like a war drum. I got out of the truck, my legs trembling, the night air cutting my skin like blades. The smell was strange, metallic, like ozone after a storm, mixed with something rotten, like burnt flesh. I looked up, and there it was, a dark, triangular shape hovering about 50 meters above me. Silent, no wind, just that low hum that vibrated in my bones as if it were inside my head. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body wouldn't obey. It was as if an invisible force held me in place, and then the figures appeared. They didn't step out of a ship with doors opening dramatically. No, they simply appeared, emerging from the darkness like living shadows. They were tall, thin, with gray skin that looked like rubber stretched over bones, black, fathomless eyes, no pupils, no emotion. They did not speak with words. It was as if thoughts invaded my mind, cold and sharp, saying, "You have been chosen. Do not resist." My stomach churned, panic rising like bile, and I thought of my daughter, her smiling face in the photo I kept on the dashboard. Why me? What did they want from an ordinary man like me? They took me, not into a gleaming ship, but to a place that was nowhere, a void where time stopped. I floated, naked and exposed, with needles of light piercing my skin, probing my mind like icy fingers rifling through memories. I saw flashes, my childhood, buried fears, secrets I hadn't even admitted to myself. One of them, the tallest, with an aura that pulsed like electricity, came closer, and I felt a searing pain at the base of my skull, as if they were implanting something, marking me as property. "You will see what others deny," the voice echoed in my head, not in words, but in images of distant worlds, skies filled with ships, humans like me, being studied like lab rats. The terror wasn't only physical, it was emotional emptiness, the sense of being insignificant, a grain of sand in a cosmos that didn't care. I screamed inwardly, begging to go back, thinking it was the end, that I would never see the sunrise again. Then a twist. One of the figures hesitated, as if it felt something human in me. Pity? Curiosity? And the hum stopped. Suddenly, I was back in the truck, the engine purring as if nothing had happened. The clock read the same time as when I had stopped, but I knew hours had passed. My body ached, red marks on my skin that faded days later. And in my mind, fragments of visions that weren't mine. I drove home in a trance, my chest tight, wondering whether I was mad or telling the truth. When I arrived, I hugged my daughter so hard it frightened her, and I cried for the first time in years, feeling the weight of a secret that consumed me. I remember a line I read later, in an old book on abductions. It was from a researcher named John Mack, who studied cases like mine. These encounters are not delusions. They are portals to a reality humanity still fears to accept. Those words echoed inside me because I was not alone. Accounts like Betty and Barney Hill's in 1961 described black eyes and mental probes identical to mine. Statistics show thousands report this every year, but most remain silent for fear of being labeled crazy. In the end, what remained was an invisible scar and the certainty that they come back. Sometimes at night, I feel the hum again, and I know it was not a dream. It really happened, and if you doubt it, ask yourself, what if it's true? What if they are watching us now? Do you believe this really happened? Have you ever experienced something similar? An encounter that changed you forever? If this touched you, it's because this video needed to reach you. Share your story in the comments, but only if you're brave. Subscribe to the channel for more real accounts that will make you question everything. And remember, the night outside may not be as empty as it seems.
My name was Sarah, a 35-year-old biologist living alone in an isolated cabin in the mountains of Washington, where the air smells of damp pine, and a fog wraps everything like a suffocating embrace. It was the summer of 2020, a hot, moonless night, and I was outside collecting soil samples for my work, nothing but beetles and dirt under my nails, the distant sound of owls echoing like ghostly laughter. I had always been skeptical, laughing at the abduction stories my colleagues told around the campfire, saying they were hallucinations caused by stress or swamp gases. But that night, as the wind stopped suddenly, as if the world were holding its breath, I felt a presence, not an animal, not the wind, but something watching me from the shadows of the trees, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up like needles of ice. I lifted my eyes to the sky, and there they were, pulsing lights, not like shooting stars, but like living veins cutting through the darkness, forming a perfect circle that descended slowly, silently, without disturbing a single leaf. My heart sped up, a raw panic rising in my chest, and I tried to run back to the cabin, but my legs felt stuck in quicksand. The air grew heavy, laden with an electric smell like burning wires, and a hum invaded my mind, not a sound, but a vibration that echoed in my thoughts, whispering, "Come, see what you deny." I dropped to my knees, the cold, damp ground beneath my hands, and figures emerged from the light, tall, slender, with pale, translucent skin that shone like moonlight on water, large, empty eyes that seemed to suck in the surrounding light. They did not walk, they floated, drawing nearer like predators in a dream you cannot wake from. My whole body trembled. The terror was not only fear of dying, but fear of losing who I was, of being disassembled like one of my laboratory specimens. They lifted me without touch, levitating me into a chamber that was not metal, but something organic, pulsing like the entrails of a living creature. Inside, the air was thick, suffocating with smells of ozone and something sweet, rotten like withered flowers and decay. They laid me on a cold surface, and probes of light danced over my skin, penetrating my mind like hot knives. I saw visions, not mine, but theirs. Distant planets dying in flames, ancient races fleeing catastrophes, and humans like me being collected for experiments, our emotions dissected like data. One of them, with a shape that seemed almost feminine, leaned over me, and I felt a horrible connection, not hatred, but a cold curiosity, as if I were a fascinating insect. "You feel so much," the voice echoed in my head, not in words but in waves of raw emotion, forcing me to relive my deepest pains, the loss of my mother in childhood, the emptiness of lonely nights, the longing for something greater than science. Panic rose. I fought internally, silently screaming for freedom, thinking this was the end, that I would dissolve into that cosmic void. But then a twist came like a flash. One of the figures recoiled, as if my human pain had touched them somehow, and the hum weakened, returning me to the forest floor. I woke at dawn, lying on the damp earth, with circular marks on my skin that itched like burns, and a sense of lost time, hours missing from the clock. My body ached, but the worst was my mind. Fragments of alien memories planted like seeds, making me question whether I was still myself, or if part of them now lived in me. I returned to the cabin trembling, locking the doors, but the fear never left. It settled in like an unwelcome guest, making me look at the sky every night with a mix of dread and yearning. Later, I researched and found similar reports, like the case of Travis Walton in 1975, where he was abducted for 5 days and returned with stories that echoed mine. A ufology expert, Stanton Friedman, once said, "These encounters are not fiction, they are evidence that we are not alone, and silence is the greatest fear." Thousands of cases documented by MUFON show identical patterns, hums, lights, marks on the skin, proving this is not isolated madness. In the end, the encounter did not destroy me, it transformed me, making me see the fragility of our existence as if we were only visitors on our own planet. This really happened, and if you feel a shiver now, it's because you know, deep down, that it could be you. Do you believe that real aliens are among us? Have you ever felt invisible eyes watching you in the dark? If this touched you, it's because this video needed to reach you. Share your own story in the comments, or keep the secret to yourself. Subscribe to the channel for more truths that will make you question reality, but only if you have the courage to face the unknown.
My name is Robert, a 48-year-old farmer on a remote Kansas property where the cornfield stretches like an endless sea of whispers and the nights are so dark you feel the darkness swallowing you alive. It was the autumn of 2015, a windless night, the air heavy with the damp smell of turned earth and decay, when I went out to check the barn after hearing a strange noise, not an animal, but a low hum, like a swarm of mechanical bees vibrating in the air. I had always been a practical man, skeptical of legends about lights in the sky or visitors from other worlds. My life was the soil, the crops, and the loneliness that comes with losing a wife years earlier. But that night, as I walked across the field, the ground trembling slightly beneath my feet, I felt a primal chill, as if the very air were alive and hungry. The lights appeared out of nowhere, not soft or dancing, but sharp, red as fresh blood, forming a disc-shaped outline that hovered over the corn, emitting a heat that burned my skin even from a distance. My heart hammered, cold sweat running down my back, and I tried to go back home, but an invisible force dragged me forward, like ice-cold hands tightening around my throat. They descended, not gracefully, but with silent violence, the air tearing like fabric, and figures emerged from the craft. Hideous creatures, not the thin gray ones from the stories, but worse, twisted bodies with scaly skin that pulsed like exposed veins, multiple eyes gleaming with predatory hunger, and appendages that extended like viscous tentacles smelling of sulfur and rotting flesh. They did not speak, they invaded. sharp thoughts piercing my mind like rusted needles, saying, "Your body is weak, we will make you useful." The terror was visceral, my stomach turning with nausea as they lifted me off the ground, my legs flailing in empty air, and dragged me into that throbbing abomination. Inside, the environment was a living nightmare. Breathing walls, slimy fluids dripping like tears, and a cold that sank to the bone, making my teeth chatter uncontrollably. They strapped me to an organic table that molded to my body like a second skin, and the horror began. Probes that not only probed, but cut, injecting something black and wriggling into my vein, a substance that burned like acid, spreading through my blood like invasive roots. I screamed, but the sound died in my throat, and horrific visions flooded my mind. Ruined worlds, races consumed by these things, and humans like me being improved, turned into hosts, their bodies contorted into hybrid forms, empty eyes reflecting cosmic void. The panic was unbearable. I felt my sanity fraying, thinking of my empty farm, the loneliness that now seemed a paradise compared to this, and I begged for death, anything to end the tearing pain inside me. But the twist came like an even worse nightmare. One of the creatures partially fused with me, its tentacle entwining with my arm, transferring fragments of its essence. Memories of eternal hunger, of hunts across the stars, of planets stripped to the bone. I fought, my body convulsing, but part of me enjoyed it. A whispering voice in my head promising power, immortality, if I surrendered. The hum rose, echoing like 1,000 voices screaming, and I felt something implanted at the base of my skull, a seed that pulsed, growing, altering my thoughts. They released me, throwing me back into the field like trash, but the horror did not end. It continued inside me. Days later, when I frantically researched, I found cases like Whitley Strieber's, who in his book Communion described alien implants that altered the mind, and Newfork statistics showing thousands of similar reports annually, with physical marks and psychological changes that last forever. A ufologist, Dr. David Jacobs, warned, "These encounters are not benign. They are invasions, and the hybrids they create walk among us, unrecognizable." Now, years later, the implant still pulses, making me see things, shadows that move by themselves, voices whispering commands, and a growing desire to return to them, to become one of them. This really happened, and if you feel the hum now, maybe they've already marked you too. Do you believe real aliens are transforming us from the inside? Have you ever felt something strange growing in you in the dead of night? If this terrified you, it's because this video needed to find you. Share your fear in the comments, or stay silent and wait for them to come. Subscribe to the channel for more truths that will devour you alive, but only if you have the courage to face what hides inside you.